Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows. In the last part we went through King Knight stage, and now it's time for us to wrap up the first third of the world with Lich Knight stage. Now I do want to correct something I said a part or two ago. The max health with tonics is 10, the only reason you can only get 9 in the first stage is because of the 5 hard-locked post tonics you start off with. Now, we unlocked a new favorite of mine last time, the component powder, by reaching a certain amount of cipher coins. What the component powder is really good at is combat. Whenever your bombs explode with this thing equipped, they leave a lingering orb of damage behind. And with every bomb you stack onto that, up to 3, that lingering effect gets larger, and on the third one it generates a gigantic plus-shaped explosion. If you can get bosses trapped in a corner with this particular powder, you can probably drain 1 to 2 full pips of health, no problem. It's absurdly powerful. With that said, as for everything else you unlocked for getting the first level of research done, there's the float casing, which makes the bombs fly forward and then they very quickly float upwards in the screen. It's essentially like Burst Man's bubble wrap from Mega Man 7. Honestly, pretty powerful in its own right. For Twoses, we've unlocked 2 of them by doing research level 1. The Quick Fuse and the Sentry Fuse. The Quick Fuse I don't like myself because it's kind of anti-long range. That will make the bombs explode more or less the moment you throw them out, so if you combine that with the component powder, you can do some interesting stuff. Whereas the Sentry Fuse, you throw the bombs out and they move for a little bit depending on the casing you chose, of course. But they then stay still, emitting a little bit of a radius of pink arrows, and the moment an enemy gets in that, they get homed in on. And that can be useful against particular boss fights like Propeller Knight in the long run. Not much to my favorite, though. And the burst we unlocked for doing that research level is the Bullet Burst, which fires a blast in front of you when you do a launch. With that said, we're now in the new section for Specter Knight's level, and this is where a bit of a pattern is going to be set moving forward. You may have noticed as I was getting into here, this hidden passageway was marked by a cipher coin embedded into a wall. That's how most of the Plague Knight exclusive level portions are handled. King Knight's is actually kind of the standout in that regard because that's the one that you just have to burst up to a ladder in the sky to get to. And whenever you're on one of these paths, 9 times out of 10, or I guess more like 7 out of 8, it's going to be where you find yourself Shovel Knight's relic. So now we have that to give the Chester where we find him where the relic normally is for Shovel Knight. Something they play a little bit with that I find interesting whenever you're in these Plague Knight exclusive sections is that they kind of mess with the orders mechanics are introduced within the level. Like, we got this whole weight platform with the skeleton helmets here. This isn't introduced normally until the latter third-ish of Specter Knight's level, but I like that they kind of just play with it a bit like that. With that said, Specter Knight's level on the whole, probably one of my least favorites in the game. Even though I like the theming and like 2 of the mechanics, it's mostly because it contains my big no-no mechanic for platformers down the line. And if you're familiar with the channel, that means you know this level is going to have a darkness mechanic where we're not able to see where we're going exactly. In particular, it's one of my least favorite variants of it, particularly the one from Ninja Gaiden 3, but we'll cross that when we get there. It is interesting thinking about the difficulty curve for Shovel Knight, though, because in general, the levels do get harder and even a little longer as you go into the game, but I remember seeing this particular tweet, I want to say this maybe around 2017-ish, about how the second set of stages onwards is a big spike from stage set 1, and I really don't think it is. At least in terms of the pure stage difficulty. I think the way that Shovel Knight stages handle difficulty is interesting. In that while there's sometimes just some complicated stage layouts and enemy placements, the big shower of difficulty is how punishing a death is in this game. Because sometimes the checkpoints are spaced so far apart that a death is absurdly punishing, whereas other times it's really not. I want to say on average stages have about 3 checkpoints overall no matter what. But some of them have 5 checkpoints, some of them have 6, and sometimes those are further spaced apart than you would think. Also, I probably should say this now. I know I might brought up the photosensitivity warning whenever we get an essence from a boss fight at the end of the last part. But I also want to basically put one on the rest of this stage as well because of how the darkness mechanic handles. It's a lot of flashing lights. And I know there's like usually certain patterns that cause that more than anything, but I'd rather be safe than sorry in the case that you are photosensitive and watching this. Also, the weird little green moss things, those things on the bottom left of the screen right now. As Shovel Knight, you could hit those time and time again to use them as impromptu platforms, but by and large, Plague Knight's bombs destroy those automatically. So, not exactly usable, unfortunately. But yeah, this is why the darkness mechanic sucks. It's one of those where you either can't see the platforms, and you have to rely on brief flashes of light to see it, which I don't like, or it's one of those where the darkness is hiding what these platform types actually are, which is preferable, but I still don't like it. Ever since Ninja Gaiden 3, darkness mechanics suck. They either cause you to just take stages at an uneven pace, or they just dickishly hide things without much of warning. Like, I can do water levels, I can do ice levels, I can do anti-gravity, I can do basically any level type except darkness consistently. Like, I think the only time I've liked a darkness level was probably Bright Man and Mega Man 4, and even then I'm not the biggest fan of that. Be careful with these spikes, by the way, because your bomb burst will throw you up into them. I think the reason I like Bright Man is more so because you can see the platforms that you need to be very careful of no matter what, because they're technically enemy sprites, so they're visible. Now that I think about it, though, something I find kind of interesting, darkness levels don't really tend to get a lot of screen time in 3D platformers. At least not in the same way they do 2D platformers like this. Like, they usually have some sort of spin on them, I guess is the way I should say it. Like, Splatter Matter, or Matter Splatter, rather, from Mario Galaxy is sort of like a darkness level in terms of the pace you have to take. The Light Up Yoshi fruit from Galaxy 2 similarly works in sort of the same way. But usually darkness levels are less so in 3D platformers, waiting to see the platforms, and more so the platforms are probably the only thing you can see. Kind of deal. Or you have one of those situations, almost like using Flash in Pokemon, where you can see the area around you, but that at least means you don't have to worry about missing a platform that's suddenly not beneath you or something like that. This is why I love the Float Burst, by the way. And I forgot to mention this last part. The Float Burst has one little neat trick you can do in that you can just press down to fall down at the normal speed in case you're wanting to go down faster. Either way, since we got the phase locket, we can give that to Chester here and not have to pay for the Arcana for this stage for Plague Knight. Arcana, don't remember which it is. The Leech Liquid. Replenish your energy by damaging enemies. This is one I wish I could use, or which I had the mentality to use more, because it drains the damage you do to enemies into your own HP. So if you're at a point in the stage where there's not many food pickups to heal yourself, you can entirely rely on that. And because of the replenishing MP system, sort of, for the sub-weapons with Plague Knight, you can kind of go willy-nilly with that and not have to worry about a lot. I think the only drawback to using a lot of MP, so to speak, is if you empty your bar all the way, it takes a second or two longer to refill. Sort of like Epona's boosts in the 3D Zeldas. Maybe you want to pace it out a bit more just to have it recharge a bit faster, but you can kind of just go off, honestly. It doesn't take too long. In fact, I'm kind of surprised there's not an upgrade in this game that speeds up the refill rate of the power meter, because that would be just an easy, quick one to make. The main reason I tend not to use the Leech Liquid is that it requires me to use my normal attack, and with sub-weapons I tend to either use the ones that are more mobility-focused, like a certain we'll see down the line, or are more for DPS, like the Big Boom, or a certain one down the line that I use a couple times. But again, your playstyle might be more involved than mine, so you might do some things differently. Plus, with how quickly you can swap between sub-weapons and casings and all that, you can just evolve on the move, essentially. Speaking of which, I should mention, you can swap between sub-weapons without having to go to the select menu like I have so far. I think I even show it off in a moment. If you hold L, it opens up a menu up there at the sub-weapon for you to press left and right to swap between them at will. The only reason it's not L and R is because the R button's the whole casing swap stuff now. It could be a bit annoying to memorize what sub-weapons in what directions, but that's the same problem I have in the Mega Man games where I can almost never remember what power-ups or what special weapons or in what direction to use L and R on when there's shoulder button use like that. And that's entirely because I'm an idiot and don't decide to memorize that stuff. Thankfully, I'm really surprised at this, they don't tend to hide any of the cipher coins in the darkness sections, at least at a point where they're like completely invisible and you have to rely on the lightning flash to find them. Because that could be very cruel, because if you miss a cipher coin, you have to play the entire stage to get it again. You do need to finish the stage for it to save. So, Reaper meets Reaper. But you're no kindred spirit. What have you come to harvest, foolish alchemist? Oh, if only you could see me yawning under this mask. Oh, spooky ghost! A mask indeed, as befits a hollow, blustering fool. You hide only from yourself. How tragic that you shall never emerge from cowardice. For here, your story must end. Specter Knight's kind of an annoying boss, but for different reasons than he was as Shovel Knight, because you can use the float casings to take care of the reach problem. Well, the float or the lob casings, now that I think about it. What makes this fight really annoying is his teleporting. Because he can teleport to either of the other corners that he's not at, and that means if he's not at a good point where you can just hit him directly with your bombs, he's probably going to be out of your reach, and it's not worth going to be moving to try and hit him again because he'll already have teleported elsewhere. His side slash is not a lot to worry about, neither is him turning on the lightning darkness mechanic. And the skeletons he can summon could be a problem for Shovel Knight, but you can just kind of float over them as Plague Knight, so you don't got a lot to worry about. Not a hard boss, just kind of annoying for reach reasons, as you can see. But like most of the bosses, dies quickly enough. Honestly, the bosses are shorter than the stages before them in every other case in this game.
Hey, what's going on down here?
Mona, what were you doing in here? How long were you watching, and you operated my torque clips unsupervised? I just dropped in. I barely saw anything. Come on. I'm not some creep. Well, I guess the charade is up. Yeah, I dance down here all the time. By myself, big deal. By yourself? That doesn't sound like fun. Well, whatever. I don't see anyone rushing to join me. I'm used to the solitude by now. Wish I could help you there, but, you know, to left feet and all. Yeah, it's no big deal anyway.
Specter Knight's given up the ghost.
Great, I need to swing by the Lich Yard and scrape up some ectoplasm later. Fantastic.
Your face, you look different. Is something the matter?
Silly, I'm smiling. Oh, by the way, take a swig of this health potion I made for you. Maybe it'll help. At the end of every section of the world map, you're given a free health potion to increase your life by 1. Up to a maximum of, I think that's 7. Unfortunately, you can only reach the max health of 10 by using health tonics. A little annoying, but oh well. So, even though we have more cases we can buy, I'm prioritizing getting the final upgrade for the power meter, because it's just that good. So now we can use our sub-weapons just a lot. And I'm not going to turn on my music sheets because we got some side stages to show off. Namely, that little gem there on the world map. Like as Shovel Knight, you can only do these little gem levels, though, if you have a sub-weapon from one of the stages in that section of the world map. So it's recommended to do them after the main set of stages is done. But similarly, like the Wandering Knights that can occasionally show up, occasionally Wandering Gems show up on a level, and they're also just a mechanic revisits to get some extra money. Which, hey, you gotta do. Admittedly, the upgrades do cost a good amount in every single Shovel Knight campaign. I think the cheapest threats... Actually, what is the cheapest Shovel Knight game in terms of, like, the money you need in the game itself? It's probably either Shovel Knight or Specter Knight, because King Knight's got a lot of upgrades, not for nothing, but it has been a little bit. Admittedly, and not just for recording reasons, the campaign I played the most recently for Shovel Knight, Treasure Trove, is Plague of Shadows here. Like I mentioned in the original LP, I had not beaten this game yet by that point. And I finally did, somewhere between 6 and 8 months ago, when I just had nothing to do one night. I figured, you know what, let's finally give that a full-ass try. With that said, now let's head over here to the Forest of Fishing. Gee, guess which sub-weapon you need to do most of the stuff here? You're gonna need the bait bomb, which I think you can't even ignore? Wow, there's a bunch of cipher coins down these pits, but it's a long way down, if only you could fish them up. You need the bait bomb not only to fish up a lot of cipher coins from pits, but also to hit levers in order to open up certain doors. And admittedly, this is the first stage I miss cipher coins in. I get them sometime over the next couple of videos, I forget exactly when. And I'll mark exactly where the ones I missed are, because, admittedly, they're in a pretty obvious location. Or at least they're obvious if you know to look for it, I guess is the way to phrase it. It's on this screen. The waterfall that I just went in front of has sparkles at the pit at the bottom. I always miss it because it blends in with the waterfall animation to my eyes for some reason. And I think I missed another one somewhere, but I forget if this place has 15 coins or 20. It is these smaller side stages where they tend to not have the main 30 per stage. There's a total of 420 cipher coins throughout this campaign, by the way. And you should have all those, assuming you find them all, before the final boss's stage. So if you don't have all of them by the time you've done the second to last stage, you're missing some somewhere. And thankfully you can check which stages you've missed them. In the same way you can check stuff in Shovel of Hope, actually, by pressing, I think it's the X button on the 360 controller scheme, at least. While on the map, you can see the totals for whichever stage you're highlighting. Notably as well, and I'll probably get into more of these as we go on, like in Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope, there are some cheat codes you can do for this campaign by entering your name as something specific on the name selection screen. By and large, all of the cheat codes for Plague of Shadows start with capital P, capital L, ampersand. For instance, PL ampersand CHRG makes your bomb burst charge instantly. PL ampersand FIZZL removes the ability to throw bombs, period, meaning you're kind of limited on what you can do. PLC ampersand BTS gives you a super explosive jump. PL and ampersand BIGT gives you a gigantic bomb. PL ampersand NOCT gives you a different walking animation, gives you a blue trail, which I believe is meant to be a Castlevania reference. And I think that's even confirmed by the cheat code after that, which is like PLC and ampersand CART, which is the same thing as that last cheat code effect-wise, but it also gives you one of the later sub-weapons, sort of meaning to shout out Alucard directly. By and large, some of the cheat codes that we talked about in Shovel of Hope still work in Plague of Shadows and the other campaigns, but by and large, every Plague of Shadows code does not work in the other campaigns. There's a couple I'm not mentioning, but because they talk about spoilery stuff, and I would rather talk about that then rather than now. I really appreciate them at least having cheat codes in Shovel Knight, though, like I think I brought up back in Shovel of Hope, because not many games do to this extent anymore. Like, I remember being shocked when one of the versions of Mario 3D World included one to, or was it maybe Mario U, that allowed you to make the air hover work a little differently. It's just not a common occurrence as much anymore, barring the indie scene. And even then, some of the indie games that you'd think would do it don't. And for beating this stage, we get an extra music sheet as well as some health tonics in this chest, which I'll take even though I'm at max capacity, so why not? I do tend to end every level, by the way, by probably heading back to the village and buying some extra stuff in the case I did a sub-level. In this case, I believe I invest in giving the music sheets we have to Percy there, and then start investing in some more powders and casings, even though I tend to not use them too much. By and large, the setup I have now of float bursts, standard fuse, component powder, and standard casing is what I use for most of the game. It's just really comfortable to me. I can't exactly explain why. But since we have enough Cypher coins, we can also now buy a lot more upgrades, and I'll talk about what these in particular are next part, because you unlock a few more, as you can see. You get, by and large, one per upgrade type with every research level. I think it's like the second to last or last upgrade set that gives you like 2 in some of them. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're gonna head on to the second portion of the world map and take on Plague Knight's own level. Here's hoping that we have a key to the back room. See you guys then.